Hayi bafethu ziyakhala manje. I-testimony ka Tumelo icon. No, 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 no. It's not holding up to the rest of the occupants of the house. Remember, Mthokozisi had testified that the second intruder was wearing a hoodie and he was carrying a knife. Tumelo said he couldn't see what he was carrying in his hand. However, he claims to have punched the guy in the face, right? Now, how do you punch somebody that close up and personal, yet you cannot tell what they are carrying in their hand? That's just the first discrepancy. The other one, you have the first one wearing a hat, having some braids. Then Tumelo tells us that he had big eyes. Mthokozisi had said his eyes were not big. And then Tumelo says he was wearing a caramel type of a jacket that is in color. And Mthokozisi had said the jacket was dark. Caramel is not dark. If anything, caramel is light, right? It's close to beige. You can't say that color is dark at all. So you can see now that there is discrepancies that are arising out of their testimonies. Now, of course, this leads to this statement being made by the one of the attorneys.
To your testimony and about the robbery incident, the ineptitude and the lack of preparation by the alleged suspects. I'm led to believe that we are dealing with one of Mzansi's dumbest criminals. Would you agree?
Uyabona ke uma sesibheke ngendlela abebengayilungiselela ngakhona indlela abayiphethe ngakhona sengikhuluma ngabo labo bantu abangena lapha endlini ushuthi ke mase sibuka leso sithombe isiyabona nathi la eMzansi asibhekene negebengu ezidomo kami
Mawusigebengu ngikufanele uziyofunda ugebengu ngabe isigebengu ufundile mawusigebengu ungafundanga so ucabanga ugebengu akufani
you don't have to go to school to be a criminal. You can be a criminal that hasn't gone to school. You can also be a criminal that is well versed.
They are clearly talking past each other there, which, by the way, brings to remembrance, to my recollection, what Mshololo once asked the same witness about their level of education in the previous trial, and he was offended. But this is precisely the reason why he was asked the level of his education. The truth of the matter is this, guys: your level of education determines your ability to assimilate knowledge. You see, how do you decipher knowledge? And how quickly do you understand what is being said? That is why, by reason of definition, a moron is an adult who has an IQ of an 3 to 8-year-old child, meaning they decipher things as slow to the level of a child between 3 to 8. So when you're listening to this, they are speaking past each other because his answer has nothing to do with the question that is being asked. That having observed everything you have told this court, we must be dealing with the dumbest Mzansi criminals here, right? And his answer is, no, you don't have to go to school to be a criminal. He's missing the point, though. The point is that these guys came to rob you. They asked for money and cell phones, but all of you had your cell phones in your pockets and others were hiding them. And Twala left the room without being searched. You get the point? That doesn't serve the purpose of their coming. That's why the question is being asked. And then he replies the way that he did, which is demonstratively showing that he doesn't understand the question.
See, the reason I'm asking you is for the following propositions. According to your testimony, this is an armed robbery for money and phones. Yet people in the house, one, Zandi Khumalo testified that the minute that demand was made, she hid the phone beneath the cushion where she was sitting.
Yabona enye iyizathu enza ukuthi mhlawumbe ukuthi ngikhulume ngale ndlela ukuthi uZandi ukhulumile lokho ukuthi makezwa nje ukuthi manje kufuneka ama cellphone wase ufihla i-cellphone ngaphansi kwekhwishini la ebehleli khona kungukuthi bakhona labantu la endlini.
Yeah, but angeke ngakhuluma kakhulu ngozandile Mr. Ramspel because istatement sakhe leso official nami endlini angeke ngibuke wonke umuntu uthi wenzani umuntu seseyinakela ngaleso sikhathi.
Now I cannot speak on behalf of Zandile. That's her statement, Advocate Ramosipile. And mind you, I also am inside of the house. I cannot be monitoring every move that is done by every person who's inside of the house.
Once again, the witness is missing the point of the question. Here are people demanding cell phones and money, and they allow you, one of you, to hide your phones. Simply put, what the advocate is saying is that when somebody walks in a house that has got 5 people or 6 people, and he's carrying a firearm, all he's going to say is, if he is there for the phones, he's going to say, your phone's on the table, please, all of you, right? And then he's going to tell them to face the wall and search them, okay? The entire process of robbing was not followed here. That's the point that he's making, that others like Tumelo had his phone in his pocket. As a matter of fact, all of them, their phones were not taken from them. And then the question is, what was then taken apart from Senzo's life? You see, this leaves a lot to be desired. And it seems to me, once again, the judge was, to a certain degree, incorrect by not allowing Mshololo to answer this to ask this question to Mthokozisi Twala, because Mshololo asked this question to Mthokozisi Twala not because she wanted to create an impression that he was an expert witness, no, but for the purposes of showing the court the level of assimilation of knowledge of the candidate, because the level of assimilation determines whether the person is lying or telling the truth as well. Because I see, for example, many in the comments are saying these people are lying. Not necessarily to the level of their education. So the questions, therefore, even the judge, when he makes a determination, he's going to say, but this is not a sophisticated witness. Therefore, they had no way of knowing that. And that is why they answer certain questions in a certain manner. That's the truth, okay? That is why it was important for that information to be given. As you can see here, I've just showed you now 2 questions which Tumelo is not answering what has been asked of him. Why? Because they are talking past each other.
And 2, Khumalo's phone is charging right at the kitchen, on top of a stove somewhere.
Okwesibili, naye ifoni kaMakhumalo phezu kwesitofu eduze nesitofu laphayana iyachargewa khona lapho.
But the intruders don't take it.
Kodwa labangeneleli abayithathi leyo cellphone.
Angeke ngachaza ke lo ngifuna ukuchaza ukungena kuloko ngoba akubhalwanga yimina, so bengingajabula umbuzo yakho mayingaqonda exactly entweni ibhalwe yimi, so le bhalwe umunye umuntu uzozizela ine court ayichazeleni ukuthi usho ukuthi babe ngenza kanjani into kanje yabo.
Well, I cannot be explicit on that one. This is something that was not narrated by myself. It is not something that was not written by me. I would really appreciate if the questions were really have to do with myself, what I observed or witnessed. I can't say anything pertaining to what I said. For your information, my phone was in my possession.
There's the evidence that this was not about a robbery of phones. There's the evidence. The fact that the statement that claims that Khumalo's phone was charging in the kitchen, what he's missing in that question is, the question is so glaringly obvious that it asserts in the question that this was not about robbery. Because if it was about a robbery of phones, that phone would have been taken. And then he goes further to confirm that, was he denying the knowledge of Khumalo's phone that was charging, but he claims his phone was with him. Okay, how is it that you have your phone in your pocket whilst the person is carrying a gun? You claim to be afraid of the fact that the person was carrying a gun. Why would you leave your phone in the pocket? Because the longer you delay when someone is asking for money, or anything who's carrying a firearm, the more probabilities of you being shot. Everybody knows that. And what is remarkable about this story, all of them are telling a story of how that Senzo stood up and went and fought with the guy who was carrying a firearm. This is a very, very strange behavior. It is abnormal for people to stand up and go and fight with someone who's carrying a firearm. Why? Because firearms have a tendency of killing people when they are discharged. So I'm not quite sure just yet as what to make out of these claims. Firstly, Longwe Twala is allowed to leave the house. He pushes someone who's carrying a firearm in his hand. And he also testified to the same thing here. For me, this is nothing short of incredible. He pushes someone who's carrying a firearm, and behind that person who's carrying a firearm, there's someone else who's carrying a knife, according to what to call the other the other witnesses. Now, that being the case, why did the guy that is carrying the knife do nothing with the fact that Longwe has just pushed the guy in front as leaving, and yet he has not put his cell phone or money on the table? That does not make sense at all. So when you're listening to these testimonies of these witnesses, either these guys are watching each other and they have just decided, or they are receiving some type of coaching. But I don't buy that they don't watch this trial. That's the first thing. Secondly, you can tell that their stories have, yeah, sure, what Tumelo has done here in his testimony was to disagree with a number of things that what you call the other Twala, Twala, said. Because Twala spoke about in the hospital, the doctor came and asked for an adult, and then Khumalo went and he accompanied him. And Tumelo doesn't mention that Twala had followed Khumalo at all. As a matter of fact, he claims that it was him that opened up Senzo's he uncovered Senzo and spoke to him about, did you call me here for this? And then he kissed him on the forehead. So when you're listening to their different testimonies, there's a lot of discrepancies in their testimonies, right? The question then, can the court get to a point that it has a finding that indeed these so-called intruders did exist? Because even the description of these intruders is not consistent amongst the describers. Because Khumalo, did I say Khumalo? Twala tells us that the first intruder was wearing what to call a hat, and he had dress, and he was wearing a dark jacket. But that is contradicted here by Tumelo. So when you consider all of these things, then you say to yourself, okay, did this person exist? Were they there? Even the description of the other guy with the hoodie, the tall guy, according to Twala, he was having a knife in his hand. But Twala was not close to that person. The person that got close to that person to a point that they fisted him or they punched them in their face is the one testifying today, Tumelo. And yet Tumelo says he couldn't tell what he was carrying in his hand. At that close range, the court obviously is left with no choice but to find that these guys are not telling the truth to the court. They are clearly hiding something. Okay, guys, that is just a paraphrase of what has happened this morning and yesterday. I probably will do a much more detailed video where we can talk to the evidence. But as of now, that's what I will leave you with. What do you think? Do you think these guys are telling the truth? For me, it's beginning to appear as though they are deliberately lying to the court. And I think the court may want to make an example out of them in terms of the law that says you can't, the law of perjury, in terms of saying you've perjured yourself in a court, therefore you are going to be liable to be sent to jail for so many years. What do you guys think? By the way, before you click away, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Bye now.